Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 73. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us for this Friday show, Steelers Nation. And Dave, that was about the busiest Thursday off-season news cycle that you could imagine. I'm scared to do this podcast because of what stories are going to break during and after the show. So a lot to talk about today, Dave.
You know, one of the beauties, and I say this all the time, and I told my wife the other day, just yesterday when I was downstairs for a bit there, that you wake up one day and you just don't know which way you're going to go. You know, you have in your mind, well, it looks like you're going to probably be a slow day. I'll try to get this done or watch this selection of tape or chart this or whatnot. But man, it can change. And you know, that's the beauty of it. You know, you and I live on the news cycle, so to speak, and then, you know, get kind of work around that. But yeah, the last couple days, Steeler related stuff, really busy, and boy, do we have a lot of, if you would have told me, you know, we would have this many new topics to talk about on the Friday show when we hung up on the show the other day on Wednesday, I wouldn't have believed you, but here we are. We got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, so strap in. Could be a long show today, but let's start with the most breaking news as of Friday morning. Vance McDonald, Steelers tight end, announced his retirement after 8 seasons in football. We talked about recently how he was going to be a cap casualty if he decided to continue playing, so I'm sure he saw that writing on the wall, but obviously is into his 30s, has had a long career, battled some injuries, but Vance McDonald announcing his retirement, really one of the more underrated trades of the Kevin Colbert era, at least the recent Colbert era, basically a pick swap with the 49ers to move back 20 spots to get him. Well worth it. McDonald, 2018, had a fantastic season, been a good blocker, a great teammate, done a lot of work for the community. So wishing Vance McDonald well in retirement.
Boy, when you draw him up, you know, as far as maybe Steeler tight ends go, and especially post Heath Miller time, you know, that's the kind that you look for, the all around kind of tight end. Play a little bit on special teams. You know, look, first couple seasons with the Steelers, I really was impressed with his blocking, and it was kind of one of the things I worried about a little bit following that trade of the Steelers acquiring him for the 49ers. He also had a little bit of a drop issue coming over from the 49ers. You know, he still dropped a few, but I thought that he did a good job at kind of decreasing those overall, and just an overall great teammate, man. The kind of guy that you really look forward to anytime that had a media session there, and obviously quickly became a pillar in the community with his work off the field. Did a lot of stuff with Ben Roethlisberger. Was the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee for the Steelers this season. That wasn't surprising, but look, Father Time catches up with everyone sooner or later, and you and I agree that probably not a huge surprise that Vance McDonald's announcing his retirement this early in the offseason here. The writing was on the wall that he was either probably going to have to take a huge pay cut down to the minimum or get cut this offseason, just the nature of the business and the Steelers' salary cap situation. And, unfortunately, his play had declined in the last couple of seasons here. And really one of the things, the knocks on him, unfortunately, throughout his career has been kind of games missed here and there to this ailment or that ailment. But boy, when you go, he will not be soon forgotten in the when it comes to Steelers tight ends. And obviously, a lot of that stems back from that block he had on Chris Conte a couple of seasons ago when the Steelers played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on national television. And The thing that I think I will always remember about Vance McDonald was really his kind of his grittiness. Very good at getting tough yards after the catch, and especially in the middle of the field on top of it. So he gave us quite a few highlights there, and we wish him well. And the Steelers certainly will be able to make use of that cap space provided.
Absolutely. Well said. And I think we forget about how good that 2018 season was for Vance's second with the Steelers because the last 2 years have been pretty underwhelming. But in 2018, Vance caught 50 passes for 610 yards and 4 touchdowns over 12 yards per catch. Those are really excellent numbers. And I had a compilation I made back in 2018. I reposted today on Twitter. No one could tackle Vance in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
The Conte play is the most, the highlight-worthy one, but no one could tackle him that season. And then, unfortunately,
against the Ravens, that play against the Ravens sticks out to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. Really tough dude. Gritty is a good word to use for him. And so I know the last 2 years have kind of been marred and make us forget about 2018. This past year he didn't even catch 100 yards worth of passes, but overall a good career, and I'm sure he'll find life's work pretty quickly.
Exactly, and it'll be interesting to see if he stays. It sounds like he really likes the area, now. Mm-hmm. And all got a nice long statement out on SteelersDepot.com that we invite everybody to make sure you stop by and read as well too. As far as the economics go related to this, with Vance McDonald retiring, the Steelers will clear $4.54 million in 2021 salary cap space after the top 51 roster displacement takes place. People say, well, Dave, I see all these reports out there that are going to save $5.2 million. Well, $5.2 million was what Vance was scheduled to make after having his contract reworked last March. And there's a lot of false information out there, right now too, talking about a team option that was on his contract. Well, that team option went away, folks, when the Steelers redid his contract last March. So, if you're reading that, it's wrong out there. There was no team option this year. Once again, he was scheduled to earn $5.2 million this year after the roster displacement takes place, saving $4.54 million overall. And once again, I don't think, maybe the timing is a little bit, has people kind of surprised here with him. But the fact of the matter is, the likelihood that Vance would have been on this roster past March 17th was decreasing almost by the day.
Well, I think it was just zero. I think he knew it. This has a bit of a Ramon Foster kind of vibe where you kind of knew that the team was going to go in a different direction. And I'm sure Vance probably didn't have a strong desire to try to find a new team at 31 years old and not for a lot of money and all those factors. So not surprised by that. But I think this is a better way to go out than being cut and then retiring. You just get to announce your retirement and kind of go out on your terms, quote unquote.
Yeah, unfortunately, he beat your video out this morning.
It's more topical now.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like you just potentially, if it had gone out 5 minutes before the announcement, you'd look even more wiser than you already look. But real quick, kind of a great segue, I guess, with what the Steelers are left with at the tight end position right now, with Vance McDonald retired, you have Eric Ebron still in the tight end room. Obviously, Kevin Radar, who had a cup of coffee on the roster at the mostly near the end of last season, played minimal offensive snaps, a little bit of special team snaps, and a decent blocker, good special team guy. Zach Gentry obviously had a good part of his second season in the NFL cut short by a knee injury that required surgery. Obviously, not a lot to look forward to, at least not yet, when it comes to Zach Gentry past this season with what he's put out on tape, which really hasn't been a lot to this date. And then they re-signed a couple of futures tight ends to future contracts. Look, the Steelers, if you dig hard enough, the Steelers give you clues about things all along here, and maybe we should have taken a little bit of a bigger clue with the couple of tight ends that they signed to reserve future contracts on Thursday, that being Charles Jones and Dax Raymond. Those names should sound familiar. Charles Jones ended the season on the Steelers practice squad, and Dax Raymond was with the team back in training camp. An interesting prospect for sure. It's unfortunate that we really didn't get to learn a lot more about him. An ankle injury during training camp cut it short. He was placed on IR, and then real quick, the team, within the allotted amount of days, waived him with an injury settlement there. So with that, I'll kind of turn it over to you to kind of recap what's in your video about the tight end position.
Yeah, I mean, I sound like a broken record because I feel every offseason, because I do it every offseason, try to compel this team to address tight end early. And I think this year, 2021, makes as much sense as any. And that was assuming that Vance was going to get cut, retirement or cut. Either way, we knew he was not going to be part of the 2021 roster. So that doesn't really change things too much. And just given the fact that this team has not drafted a tight end highly. They have drafted a guy on day 1 or day 2 of the draft since 2007 with Matt Spaeth, which is just crazy to me for a team that is always about building through the draft and building from within and keeping their own guys that way. I think knowing that Ebron probably plays out the final year of his deal in 2021, you draft a rookie now, maybe you add a Jesse James type of guy, move on from Ebron after this season, and then that rookie can ascend into a starting role for 2022. So this would be a really good year to address. I'm not saying it has to be done at 24. A lot of options, a lot of ways that this thing can go. There may not be a player worth it at 24, but if you could get, for example, a Brevin Jordan from Miami, a Pat Freiermuth from Penn State in the second round, for example, I think that would be ideal for this team.
Yeah, and obviously tight end is one of my favorite positions to scout when it comes to pre-draft process and all like that. I've barely scratched the surface on that. However, I did an extensive breakdown on Kyle Pitts out of Florida already from the receiving aspect. I went back and looked at a little bit more of his run blocking attempts. Let's put it that way. Not a lot to write home about there, but look, I mean, and we talked about, I think the other day, mostly today's NFL tight end are more of those move guys anyway. It's rare to kind of find that all-around guy. That's why when you come across a guy like a George Kittle or a Kelsey or somewhere along those lines, man, sit up and take notice of them, because that's the best of both worlds. Now, the Steelers, especially as of late, going kind of the Ladarius Green to Eric Ebron route, it lets you know that look, sometimes what's out there that maybe we really would like isn't out there. So you got to get the next best thing, and obviously to get one that can be highly utilized in the passing game is key. And if they can do any kind of blocking, then absolutely you try to work with that the best you can. I think we both agree that, and I think you had an article about this the other day as well too, didn't you? Eric Ebron, about as advertised. And I think, yeah, look, I've had some disparaging remarks about Eric Ebron from the time he was signed, but on top of it, he was exactly as advertised. So the question becomes, you're just not going to – it's hard to replace those 50-something receptions that he had, and touchdowns that go along with it. You just can't turn your head to those just because you don't like the drops or how he run blocks. It'd be different.
None of that's a surprise.
Right. Look, we talked about it. The drop. One of the first things, I think one of the first tweets I put out there after he was signed is that you better put those hands in some sort of a stretcher to try to work on those hands, because that's one of the things that stuck out the most, or one of the several things that stuck out the most about his tape in the NFL prior to the Steelers, signing him. What was his hands? And then the run blocking. I mean, neither one of us were surprised. Look, he gets a B- for effort, all right? But the end result and that's not going to change. He's not going to dramatically improve, if any, as a run blocker. So then you got to look at him at what he offers you as a receiver, and really that's as advertised too. A guy that can run those corner routes, a guy that can do something for you in the end zone, a guy with the athleticism to either go around or over tacklers there, and a guy that can really work right up the middle thirds of the field as well too. I think we saw 3 or 4 instances this past season, either explosive plays or right damn near close to explosive plays of him working that middle third of the area. And we just don't see that a lot out of the Steelers offense overall in the last couple of years, working that area of the field. So, yeah, I get down on him, but he was exactly as advertised there. But with that, now that Vance McDonald's out the door, you better have a plan in place, because at most you have one more season, I think, out of Eric Ebron, and at most, and it's hard to imagine him not sticking around now that Vance McDonald's gone. So I think we both have agreed for quite a while Jesse James would certainly be a nice option should something happen with him in Detroit. But on top of it, and I think you said this in the video as well too, you have to go all the way back to Matt Spaeth. The last time the Steelers drafted a tight end in the first, what was it, 4 rounds?
Day 1 or 2, so top
right.
3 rounds.
Right, top 3 rounds.
Really, they haven't drafted one in the 4th round either, so you can stretch it and say because of the highest pick they've used as a 5th rounder on Gentry and Jesse, and I think those were the 2.
Right. Now, once again, we already have a couple of profiles up on SteelersDepot.com. You can bet y'all be digging into them even more now that Vance McDonald has retired there. But you're not going to get any argument out of me out of that video, Alex. I think tight end needs to be high on their scope first 2 or 3 picks this year. And really, it was something I think you were calling for last year about this time.
Yeah.
And obviously that didn't happen there. So I think you might get your wish this year.
I hope so. I think this year's tight end class is a little bit better than last year's, and obviously there's more draft capital for the Steelers to work with this year compared to last. So I like the odds better this year than I did last year. But yeah, my offseason plan quickly was Vance was going to be gone. I did do a cap casualty, but retirement, it's the same functions, the same for Pittsburgh's purposes. You can try to re-sign Jesse for a real cheap 2-year deal. I mean, it's almost guaranteed the Lions are going to cut him. New regime, he's getting paid too much. They got Hawkins in there. Dude didn't produce that much. He should be cut, so re-sign him cheap and then draft somebody. And so in 2021, you go Ebron, Jesse, rookie. Next year, move on from Ebron, still have Jesse, rookie ascends into a full-time role, because that tight end position usually takes about a year to transition to, because it is so tough for these guys to go from college, where they're doing a lot of spread stuff, stand-up stuff, to make that transition to the NFL, especially in Pittsburgh. So that'd be my rough game plan of how to do it for this year, transition yourself nicely into next year. I think that'd be the right approach for Pittsburgh to take.
Absolutely. And we will be talking a lot about tight ends as the pre-draft process goes on. Got a couple of them already on the site as well too. Who did the Miami kid?
Devin did. Yeah, Brevin Jordan.
Boy, what do you think about? We got how many of those we got out already? 10 or 11 draft profiles out already?
Yeah. Just about, and I got one on tight end, Hunter Long from Boston College, going up probably tomorrow. So yeah, we are rolling along here in draft season.
Absolutely, fun time of year, and I've found myself doing easy for me to say contextualizations already. I'm working on the BYU wide receiver, having a lot of fun with him already. All right, that's just scratching the surface on the news, and all we did was talk about tight end position. And boy, there was really technically an even bigger story than that floating around on Thursday.
Yes, there was. Had Vance's news not come across the wire this morning, our top story today would have been another Steeler signed to one of those reserve future contracts. It wasn't just Charles Jones and Dax Raymond. It was highlighted by Dwayne Haskins, former first-round pick of Washington, cut by the team earlier this year. Haskins had visited the Panthers. Now he will become the Steelers' project to try to see if they can revive his NFL career. Obviously earned a lot of buzz in the national media because of the name value, because of the story, because of the falling out in Washington. I know you've watched a lot of tape on him, and I'm sure we both have a lot of thoughts on this. My overall thought is that this move means a lot less than probably what the national media is going to try to spin it as. This isn't Haskins as the heir to Ben, or even I think the heir to be Ben's backup for this season. This is a no-risk kind of move for a team, as you said, Dave, that loves those former first-round picks. Trying to revive someone's career often does not work out, but if it works, you have a fairly talented player. If it doesn't, you didn't really lose anything because this is a reserve future contract.
Do you will you be posting the video of yourself doing backflips and cartwheels upon learning of the Haskins?
Well, you know how
signing?
I found out. This is how I found out the news, because I was watching tape on somebody, I think Hunter Long, and I saw the DM from you that said, "I have Haskins," and I said, "Are you serious?" They released to sign Dwayne Haskins, or about to sign Dwayne Haskins. So that was how I found out. That was my little reaction, was me saying out loud, audibly, "Are you serious?"
Yeah, and that's really the reaction. I don't blame you, because look, I color me surprised that they went that route for a number of reasons, and mainly because of his tape and his mainly because of his NFL tape to date, which obviously just since 2019, and his actions both on and off the football field only since he was drafted. Those things alone are why I was shocked that the Steelers, even for the minimum amount that it's going to end up being that they got him for, that I was surprised. This is total reclamation project here, and after. You know me, I try to look at things at all angles. Even if I don't like something maybe that Steelers do, I try to back up from it. I try to take a deep breath, and then I try to look at it from every angle. And I think a lot of people, I think half the people, that follow Steelers Depot are maybe Ohio State fans, and they're ecstatic, and let's throw a parade. Boy, we got the Steelers got Dwayne Haskins. What a great move. And the other half are probably like, WTF, and I'm not talking about
WFT.
I'm not talking about WFT, the team that originally drafted him. You're stealing my punchlines, man. Look, I spent some time to write this out, more of a post to try to make sense of the Steelers' decision to sign quarterback Dwayne Haskins, and I know that you're firmly on lock and step with it, every aspect of it there, and just kind of going over some highlights of this. I pointed out first that I was kind of shocked, and mainly because of his history and all. And look, that first round contract that he had, in the new CBA era that we've been in for quite some time now, it wasn't an albatross of a contract when Washington waived him, okay? And obviously, look, your first round draft pick, that contract comes with a 5th-year option as well too. It spoke volumes, I think, that there wasn't at least one team out there willing to say, you know what, we'll take on this reclamation project, and the contract's cheap enough, we can afford it. And look, what's the worst thing to come out of it? We have him under contract for 7 more years. We've got a 5th-year option that comes along with it. If we quickly know that we made the wrong decision, we just cast him aside, just like Washington did. So I thought it spoke volumes about him not getting claimed right out of the chute. All right. Well, here we are. Fast forward a little bit further along. Look, the Joshua Dobbs is set to be an unrestricted free agent in a few weeks. Devlin Hodges, who spent the season on the practice squad, it sounds like really seems like the Steelers are pretty much, at least on the surface for now, wash their hands with him. That leaves the Steelers with currently just 2 quarterbacks under contract for the 2021 season. That's Ben Roethlisberger and Mason Rudolph. Both those guys are only under contract through the 2021 season. While we think Ben Roethlisberger is going to play in 2021, we don't know. Nobody knows for sure at this point here. So the team essentially, look, they needed a number 3. At this point, they needed one that was cheap. They needed one with if they could get it a little bit of pedigree. And oh Lord, Alex, we know Kevin Colbert just you give him something with a little bit of draft pedigree there, whether it's a kid or it's a veteran, he just can't say no to it. And obviously Haskins, who I think we both agree was overdrafted, not just by a little bit, but by a lot. He still was a first round draft pick, and I think that kind of tinsel associated with him is the kind of stuff that Kevin Colbert just can't say no to, and especially if it's a cheap price. Now, Mike Tomlin and Dwayne Haskins apparently now share agents on top of that.
Right.
That probably played a little bit into this to some aspect as well, too. And Mike Tomlin loves reclamation projects. He loves them. And I think there's some reports out there that the Steelers had a little bit of maybe pre-draft interest in Haskins. They're on top of it. You put all of it together, and look, you got him for a minimum salary. I think another aspect that won't be talked about here really overall is what happens if you did get something here. Let's say whatever the expectations are at this point for Dwayne Haskins are, which we obviously don't know them, but whatever those expectations are that the Steelers have in him, if he meets those expectations in 2021, yes, it's only a 1-year contract, but he would then, assuming he makes it through the entire 2021 season, he would be a restricted free agent. And then at that point, you could even throw what's called an original round restricted tender on him, which is cheaper than a first round tender, because you don't have to put a first round tender on him because his original round was first round. So
if someone wanted to sign him, they would have to give up a first round pick.
Exactly. So if anybody wanted to sign him away on a original round restricted tender, it would cost them the original round that Haskins was drafted in. That'd be a first round. Well, newsflash, nobody's probably going to do that unless Haskins just has to play in 2021 and plays out of his ever-loving mind. And then once again, that's a great problem to have if you get to that point. So it's like you got him on a 1-year contract. It's almost really a 2-year contract, so to speak, because of it's essentially an option, if you want to look at it that way, all depending on kind of the expectations that the team has for Haskins in 2021. So it looks good from that. So even if the reclamation project goes good in 2021, you have say whether or not he goes at that point there. So that's another way to look at this as well too. And who knows? Worst case scenario is you cut him anywhere from 2 weeks from now to the start of regular season from now. You say, you know what? It just didn't work out. All right. That's worst case scenario. Best case scenario, I think, is maybe you have a stopgap guy there in 2022 while maybe you develop somebody there. Assuming that Ben Roethlisberger and Mason Rudolph are no longer with the team at that point. At least you have potentially maybe somebody to serve as a stopgap that has a little bit of NFL experience there.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Those are basically all my thoughts. I'm not going to be obviously too upset at this move because you recognize it for what it is, which is a no-risk reserve futures contract. These are the same contracts that J.T. Barrett and Brogan Roback and Dustin Vaughn got signed to. I was looking back at old previous quarterbacks that were signed to these type of offseason deals. And so there's nothing tied up in them. You need a number 3 quarterback, understand all of that. And I know that this move gets often compared to a Paxton Lynch or even a Mike Vick, former first-round pick. Steelers are taking a flyer on. But this one reminds me most of the Justin Gilbert trade that they made a couple years ago. Top 10 pick, a guy with some off-field work habit type issues, at least reported. Gilbert and Haskins have had those, and you just see if you can make it work. And obviously it didn't work for Gilbert. Who knows if it'll be any better for Haskins. But, that's the overall approach. My thought, though, is twofold though, Dave, because we know Haskins has talent. The issue is just reported work ethic and making right decisions off the field and things like that. And in an offseason that's likely to be virtual, I don't know how much hands-on, face-to-face time you're going to get to work with him. And so if you're not really seeing this guy until late July for training camp, it's a lot of free time on your hands without really getting to work with this guy. And so that's a concern there, and why I think the Steelers have a good culture and a strong locker room. I mean, I think Washington had that last year with Ron Rivera. So why didn't it work there? Why couldn't they get him to buy into those things, considering he knew the expectations and he was the starter and was supposed to be the guy? Why couldn't it work there? And what makes me think it'll work any different or any better in Pittsburgh? I hope that it can, but I don't know what compelling evidence there is to suggest that.
Well, there's a lot of fanboys out there on the Twitter machine, and probably some listening to this podcast who we're going to upset that might become former podcast listeners today. And that's okay. But that, Alex and I are tasked with the job of looking at this team from all angles, and it includes all players on top of it there as well, too. I get some comments from people saying, well, look at the coaching over there in Washington, and look at the talent that he. Look, I don't. People just disparaging that wide receiver core over there. Scary Terry, a guy that Haskins played with at Ohio State, was over there as well too. And look, after going through some of this tape, I think Dwayne Haskins owes Scary Terry some money. Thinking back to the college career now, some of that college tape I went over a couple years ago there. Obviously focused more on the wide receivers at the time than I was Haskins, the quarterback there. But I'm getting a lot of 1-on-1s equal 2s now back in the back portion of my brain back there from old tape watching and all right now. Ron Rivera is a respected guy, and I think just looking at how quickly that culture – look, I think if you go back and you read in between the lines and some of the things that was have been written about the selection of Haskins by Washington, there were some twisted arms in that organization. From my understanding, I'm not so sure that Gruden and several other people in that organization wanted to draft that kid where they drafted him. I think this was Daniel Snyder being Daniel Snyder and saying, I like the kid, I want him. And then at that point, obviously you had the quick change in the coaching staff this past offseason. You have you don't have much of it. The pandemic's all mixed in there. And I think Ron Rivera did Daniel Snyder a solid by doing his best to try to work with the lump of clay there, get Haskins up and running and starting the season. But it did not take long for Ron Rivera to figure out what the hell is going on there. And he probably just said, look, and then obviously the off the field issues, which, I don't want to, focus on what Haskins has done off the field since he's been in the NFL and all, but obviously that played a part in the role of him being jettisoned so quickly, like we saw this past season with Washington there. So don't point the finger at the Washington organization and the coaching staff and Ron Rivera for this not working out with Dwayne Haskins. All right, the smartest thing they probably could have done, and probably the best thing they probably could have done for this kid, is what they did, is cutting him loose. Now, and don't pretend like the Steelers are some magical, mythical land of Oz that are all of a sudden going to straighten it. We've worked out the Wizard of Oz in 2 consecutive podcasts now.
Are we getting royalties or something?
No, likely not. Sure. But don't view this as, oh well, here are the Steelers, the epitome of the of NFL organizations. They'll get this kid straight. Now look, do they have a great locker room? Is it a nice dynamic? To think about your defensive captain being Cam Hayward, being an Ohio State product just like Haskins, and those two maybe having a couple conversations, and maybe the reality of Haskins saying, oh boy, I didn't enjoy having 1 foot out of the NFL already this early in my career. All of that sounds great. It makes for a great story, and really I thought you put it best there when we started talking about this. This move isn't isn't the magnitude that the media is going to try to make it out to be. Sure, it's all going to make news because we're talking about a former first-round draft pick here so quickly, from 2019. But that's where it ends, really, real quick with this kid. And also another great thing that you hit on there is looking ahead at what this offseason likely is or isn't going to be, which is more isn't than is. Right. This kid's going to have about 6 weeks in training camp to show what he can and cannot do. At this point, that needs to at least be that he could be a number 3 in my mind. Period. I think people thinking that this kid's going to compete for a number 2 spot at this point, and assuming Ben Roethlisberger comes back, is quite the stretch right now here. And then on top of it, one thing I think that is in his corner is that there is not going to be an off-season program, because that's going to keep a lot of the cameras out of his face here and allow him.
Don't you think he needs that? Because he's got to get into the system. He's got to be around these guys. I think if he's just sitting at home like the rest of these guys, that's where you might get yourself into trouble.
Well, I mean, hopefully they're telling him, look, you better stay. Look, he's on a short leash, right? I mean,
sure, of course.
If he looks at somebody the wrong way, it's not going to bode well in his favor. So I think the fact, and I would imagine at some point in the next couple of weeks they'll get him in front of a Zoom camera, right? But it's not going to be the week in, week out thing with him. Right. And I think that's good. I think that's good overall for him, because it allows him not to have to focus on, oh Lord, be fearful of the next media session, and allow him to concentrate on his football career a little bit more.
Yeah,
that's my view of it.
Yeah, I think the structure would be good. I mean, the reporting from the Washington Post this past year was that, and I'm trying to read a quote here, that the coaching staff was, quote, stunned by Haskins' constant late arrivals to meetings, failure to master the playbook, and refusal to prepare for games as diligently as NFL quarterbacks must. You can't blame that on culture, even if it's a bad culture, which I don't think they had in Washington this past year at least. That's just a personal thing. And I think if you don't have that structure, and there's an off-season program where you're just kind of, the onus is on you to do your own thing and to kind of, put in that time. Hopefully he does. Hopefully these last couple months have been a wake-up call to him. And I think it's a good thing he comes into Pittsburgh where there are no expectations. There is no weight of, you are the franchise quarterback, you are the captain, you are the everyone – the guy that everyone looks towards. I think not having that is probably a good thing for Haskins right now, but I would certainly prefer having an off-season program where he'd be in that building around Mike Tomlin, talking to teammates in person and having that structure, because that's probably the best thing for him right now. And obviously, I don't think he's going to get that.
But I'm not focusing on that aspect of being around team. I'm focusing on the aspect of the cameras out of his face. That's
even when the cameras aren't in his face, if he's showing up late to practice, I mean, that's just a workout.
Well, I mean, look, I'm sure they have start times for these Zoom meetings too, right?
Right. Yeah, and I hope that obviously he does all those things. But I don't know. I think the structure of having.
Well, I would like to think by now that Mike Tomlin's got a pretty good structured program when it comes to non-in-person meetings and whatnot. And
sure, but there's just a difference to do it in person than virtually.
Well, yeah, look, you're not going to have them on the field, period. If you have 0 rookie mini camps and 0 OTAs, you're not going to see this. They can't have the interaction with them either until X amount of time, because of CBA rules anyway there. So, unless these, you think Ben Roethlisberger is going to go pick him up and take him to the park?
To the park? Is that where they're going to go? I don't think so. But I just, point taken, I understand that. Obviously, even under normal circumstances, you wouldn't have a lot of time, but just even whenever you do have time, if it's virtual and the coaching staff has talked about it, it's harder to create a connection with these guys if you're doing it virtually than if you're doing it in person. Keith Butler, Danny Smith, those guys have talked about the value of looking a guy in the eye and actually talking to him. And I think Haskins needs that connection with somebody, that buy-in right now, to try to get him on the right path and live up to the talent he obviously has.
Look, we're still coming to the same conclusion here. I'm just saying I think the aspect of him not having to face the media bodes well for him. We still come to the same conclusion that the fact that he's not going to be able to really do anything, and the team's not going to really learn about his overall football IQ or his ability on the field until they show up at Heinz Field or Latrobe or wherever they show up at in the middle of July there, and that is going to be a huge obstacle for him. We both agree on that. I'm just saying from the aspect of him not having to deal with all the BS that goes along with being an NFL player might help his cause a little bit.
Sure, and just not to sidebar this too much, but I just saw a report from a half hour ago. Hank Aaron has passed away.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here looking at some of this stream across as well too. And a kid like me that grew up in the South, and obviously I was a Pirates fan, but the Braves were right there around the corner. Not necessarily around the corner, but first couple of ball games that I saw, major league games in person that I saw were Braves games, and obviously Hank Aaron being from Mobile, Alabama. That area down there, and you've obviously been to Mobile, Senior Bowl a couple times and all like that, and they even call that minor league stadium there Hank Aaron Stadium there and all. So that's obviously a huge blow for Southern baseball and Atlanta Braves, or really Major League Baseball. I mean, we're talking about the all-time leading home run hitter here. When it comes to that stuff, as the Hank. Sad loss. I'm reaching that age now, Alex, where I wake up every morning and you start to see some of these guys you grew up, reading and kind of idols, if you will, of some, whether it be sports or music or historical, that's when you've gotten old, is when you wake up and every morning you're reading headlines about people passing away like this.
Yeah. Anyway, to go back to Dwayne Haskins, again, I'm not going to be too mad at the move because there is no risk to it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then you can just cut him without really any fanfare or any investment tied up into him. The question I have, though, is people saying could he beat out Rudolph, or could he be the heir to Ben? If he plays well, what do you do with him? When's he going to get the chance to play? I mean, he's a number 3, and I don't think he's certainly not going to enter camp as a number 2, and he's going to have to really work hard and do those things to beat out Rudolph, which I don't think he's in a position to do right now. Rudolph is trusted and known and working hard and doing all those right things. So, I mean, he's the number 3, and unless there's major injuries that strike in the 2021 season, assuming he gets that far, there's really won't be much of an opportunity for him to play, especially if preseason doesn't happen again, which is up in the air right now.
And look, this is one of the other things I wrote in that article after they signed him yesterday as well too. Even though I think you and I still are in the boat that we don't believe that this team's going to draft a quarterback, at least not early in the draft, the signing of Haskins means absolutely zero when it comes to those decisions. If this team gets in a position and they see a quarterback that they like and want in the first couple of rounds of this draft, having Haskins on board right now come the end of April means absolutely zero right now. So don't even though we still think that it's going to go the way that we thought it was going to go and went last season, we think it's going to go the same way this offseason here. You can't speak in absolutes that, well, look at what's happened here. They turned loose of Devlin Hodges. Dobbs unlikely to be back. They signed Haskins there. Well, that's it. They're not going to draft a quarterback there now. Even though we think that's going to be the end result, it does not prevent this team from still going that direction, and it still does not prevent this team from adding somebody else, especially if Ben Roethlisberger decides not to come back, a veteran on the cheap to compete in that room. Once again, I don't know what the Steelers' expectations are with Dwayne Haskins at this point but I bet a lot of those expectations include him at least making it to training camp. Right. If he can get that far, I think that's number one. Number two, from what I've seen on tape so far, you're going to have to have a lot of convincing to make me even get in the boat that this guy can compete to be the number 2 quarterback.
Well, yeah, let's go to the tape because that's what we do around here. Let's start with the good, though, because I know we've been kind of negative overall to Haskins, and I don't want to feel like we're piling on. So I watched tape last night. You probably watched more than me, but what is the good you're seeing with Dwayne Haskins that is drawing Pittsburgh to taking the chance on him?
When used in a kind of a look, you go back to the kind of the offense the Steelers ran this season, right? Throw short, run long. I think he does a good job of getting the football out quickly in those kind of situations there. Did okay as far as the quick passing game goes. I think he likes throwing that corner route out. I think he's got the short area arm strength to really drill the football on those 7 and 12-yard outs, situations like that. And once again, I think he does a good job of getting the football out. I think overall he's got arm strength. I just don't think he knows where it's going to go all the time when he does let loose of it. Outside of that, I struggle to come up with a lot of good positives with him in his NFL tape to date.
Yeah, I think there's a live arm. I think he's able to drive the football. There are times where I've seen him manipulate safeties and go through full field reads. It's not as consistent or often as it needs to be, obviously, but there are moments where you just see it. And the guy really had a great run at Ohio State. I know that doesn't mean a whole lot for the NFL purposes right now, but him coming to finish that season out and go on that great run. I mean, obviously there was a lot of talent that maybe shouldn't have made him, a top pick the way he was drafted, but a top, relatively speaking, a relatively high pick. So there is still talent there that can be unlocked, and if he's able to, do the little things off the field and work.
Be specific of that talent being unlocked.
Well, like I said, I mean, obviously the guy has a really good arm. I mean, he's able to drive the football. There's probably some accuracy things and some timing things he's got to work on, but he was able to make those plays while reportedly at least not having the best work ethic and study practices. And if he's able to combine a better work ethic and focus and attention to the game, then hopefully that's going to produce better results.
So you just more, the live arm is the biggest aspect to you?
It's one of it. I mean, obviously he's more talented than your typical number 3 reserve future contract kind of guy. I mean, that's an obvious thing to say, but it's something worth saying anyway.
All right. I did not make it through all 400 pass attempts, but I went through quite a bit of them. He's not an X's and O's guy yet. He really has he seems like he struggles to know what he's looking at defensively overall. His deep ball's crap. All right, he might have the arm, but he has no touch to his deep ball right now. He lets it go. His mechanics are awful, especially on deep balls. He tries to all arm it, okay? And he's got this kind of flick to him too that it gets out there, but every deep pass looks the same. It looks like it's on a line with him.
Right.
All right. Now here's some metrics for you. On throws of 10 to 19 yards down the field last season, so 10 to 19 past the line of scrimmage, he was 15 of 45 for 261 yards with 2 TDs and 2 interceptions. Alex Smith, which is by no means a great comparison when it comes to deep ball passing, because one of the things I have knocked on, people can go back through these podcast episodes over the years, I have forever cracked on Alex Smith and the deep ball. On throws last season of 10 to 19 yards, Alex Smith was 15 of 20 for 256 yards with 1 TD and 1 INT. 15 of 45 on throws 10 to 19 yards down the field is horrible, all right? That's what, 33%, right? 33.333333%. In 2020, Dwayne Haskins was 3 of 24 on for 99 yards with 0 touchdowns and 4 interceptions on deep passes of 20 or more yards down the field. Okay, I have pulled all 24 of those attempts, and I know you have seen them because I sent you the link to them on top of them. I will have a post about them hopefully later today that kind of contextualizes them a little bit more, but you don't need the data that goes along with the contextualization that I'm going to provide in this video. All you need is the video. It's not pretty. I think there's like 6 catchable balls in there, 4 interceptions. He probably should have had 7 interceptions in total there. Horrible. And really, you go look at his 2019 deep ball tape as well, too. You find a lot of the same stuff in there on top of it. It looks like he has no idea. He focuses in on receivers on that deep passing tape. He has really no awareness of what's happening other than it looks like his mind's made up pre-snap of where he's going with the football. End of story. A lot of bad decisions in there on that alone. You see a lot of that in his other passing tape as well too. Where do they get this notion that he's this mobile athletic quarterback as well?
Yeah, I don't know. I know that was talked about when he came out of Ohio State. I think there were some analysts that obviously didn't do their homework talking about that. And I mean, he can move a little bit, but it is just that. It is a little bit. He's better than Mason Rudolph, but not by a lot.
Specifically, let's see here. Let me give you some more stats here. Outside of the pocket in 2021, he was 12 of 23 for 97 yards with a TD, 1 interception, and 4 sacks. So, and this was a response that someone reached out to me on Twitter and says, yeah, Dave, but he does well on play action and rollouts. He is definitely not a pocket passer. He is much better outside of the pocket. Okay, are we talking about some Ohio State film I haven't seen yet? Because it ain't in his NFL tape yet. All right. If it sounds like I'm down on his tape, well, I am. Sorry. Once again, the positives that I've seen so far on him is it begins and ends with what you said, Alex, and that's just the live arm aspect of it. Everything else, this kid needs to be broken down like a shotgun and put back together again, period. And I don't know how you're going to do that during this offseason.
Right. There's not a lot of time to do that. I didn't do as thorough tape study as you have, but I wanted to start last night with just the highlights and the lowlights. So I looked at all the touchdowns he's thrown, all the interceptions he's thrown, see if I could glean any sort of data from that. Maybe this stuff will be surprising, maybe not, but here's some of the numbers I have. Of the 14 interceptions that he threw, guess how many came versus zone coverage?
So I went through them yesterday as well, too, in the TV versions of them. Seemed like I saw quite a few zone situations there.
Yep, 11 of the 14 have come versus zone, and that to me is an indication of not processing. Well, I mean, now that you can distill it this black and white, but usually interceptions versus zone is a processing thing, and interceptions versus man is a maybe physical arm talent thing, where you just didn't put the ball placement in the right area, or you didn't have the strength to drive the football, or whatever the case was. But 11 against zone coverage, where I mean, some of them he's just throwing in the windows that he should not be throwing into, just not anticipating coverages.
A lot of predetermined throws. It felt like, yeah.
There was the one against, I think, the Eagles. It was a Yankee concept versus cover 3, and he just throws it right to the cornerback in that deep third, where you just cannot make that throw at all. Another versus cover 2, throwing it triple coverage essentially. So 11 of the 13 have come. 11 of the 14, I should say, have come against zone coverage, which to me signals a lack of understanding and processing.
All right, what else stuck out to you in those?
The other stat I came away with, and again, this is maybe more obvious because we know Haskins wasn't playing well. We know the team wasn't good whenever he was starting as a quarterback. But of the 14 interceptions, guess how many he threw with his team trailing? Not tied, not ahead, just trailing.
Probably quite a few of them.
13 of the 14 came when he was behind. And that's, again, sort of obvious because you kind of figured they weren't playing well, they were behind a lot. but that signals also to me that he was pressing a lot because he got down behind and he was making a bad play and he was stacking bad plays. Of the 7 games where he threw at least 10 passes and also threw an interception, in 4 of those 7, he threw multiple interceptions. So this is a guy that is stacking bad plays. He makes one mistake, team gets behind, he starts pressing, trying to make up for it, and it's just doing too much. And so that is just an overall viewpoint where I think he's struggling with his processing, struggling to read, understand zone coverage. And when he gets behind and makes one bad play, has that quicksand, factor of, just trying to struggle so much to make that next great play that he digs himself a deeper hole. That is my initial evaluation based on the tape, based on this data.
And plus, he had more interceptable balls than what got intercepted too.
Right.
Last 2 seasons. There's probably 6 or 7 in his tape the last 2 seasons that probably should have been picked off.
Right, but I think the number says it clear. Only 1 interception came when he was ahead in the game. All the other 13 came when he was behind, and I think that just says a guy that is trying to do too much.
All right, obviously, look, we have to go through a lot of the other part of his tape. We got most of the offseason to do this anyway. On top of it, but salvageable to what degree? In first blush look at his NFL film.
I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of that's up to him. I think it's a lot about, is he going to change his own course? Is he going to have better study habits and work ethic and off the field decisions and things like that? I mean, that's all up to him. So I can't predict that. The team can help him a little bit, but only so much. A lot of it's up to him. So how has he reacted to everything that's happened these last few months of, the losing his captainship, getting released, now just being just another guy on this offseason roster trying to make a team without that big money contract. Hopefully he turns it around. I'm not going to say he can't. I think it's possible, but it's going to be up to him.
I mean, this didn't just show up to some Zoom meetings and learn the playbook and voila, I'm better.
Yeah, no, it's a long process. You're going to have to, as you said, he's got a short leash. He's going to have to prove it every single day. There is no margin for error. And he's got a lot of free time on his hands, which is the concern. I mean, he might not see this team in person until late July. And so hopefully he's doing the right things in his life to get back on track. And
if there is one small thing, I guess, working in his favor with it, because you admit his mechanics are awful, right? And his throwing motion, and I mean, it's all a mess. I guess the only kind of bright spot or maybe positivity when it comes to maybe being able to get some things to change with him, but you just wonder when, is the fact that Washington really didn't have much of an offseason with him last season either. And then they try to say, look, we got to get this, there's pressure to see what, he's in his second year. We got to get him on the field a little bit more and try to get him, see what we have here with him. So, and then obviously with the pandemic interruption, you just not a lot you could have done with him after his rookie season to kind of work with him,
Right. Plus new coaching staff and all that.
Right. So, and then you kind of wonder what happened during that rookie season with him as well too. Him just merely waking up and saying, "Look, I had one leg out of the 1 foot out of the league, and I'm getting this new lease on life with a great organization with the Steelers," is not damn near enough, and nor is it enough that whoever the new OC or the who winds up being the quarterback's coach or whatever, that's not enough either. And nor is it enough that, he'll have a veteran quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger, blah, blah, blah. That's not enough either. This kid's got to make one hell of a transformation to even make it as a number 3 right now in my eyes. Forget about the rest of it. I think the expectations with him is if you at least get into a comfortable enough situation where he is your number 3 in 2021, I think that's monumental right now at this point. Period.
Yeah, that would be the goal, I think, to start. I mean, that's a good first step for him. And so, again, when we talk about the fresh start and the Steelers locker room and the coaching staff and all that, and that's all well and good, but everything that Haskins will do in his future is up to him. The decisions he makes, the choices he makes, whether or not he really wants to turn his career around or not. And maybe he does, and I hope he does. And again, this may have been a big wake-up call to him, and certainly root for the guy, but it's ultimately up to him.
Look, it's a huge win if they get him to 2022. I think because of the sheer fact that at least they think something's there, and maybe this guy can be stopgap at least maybe for 6 games of 2000. You know what I'm getting at there? And then obviously your long-term optimism would be, I'll be damned. They stole this guy and he ended up being a quarterback for 6 or 7 years. But that's way out there fanboy optimism. I think they have done something if they get him to training camp right now at this point. That's my view on him.
That's my focus. Short-term goal of just get him there to training camp and get him in that building every single day and go from there. And if you do that, then that's a good start.
Where am I being too hard on him at, do you think? Because people are going to say, oh, man, Lord. People are going to, well, like I said, thank you for tuning in, folks. We're sorry we lost you as a listener, because I think we're going to lose some listeners today because of this being an Ohio State product and kind of our view overall combined outlook of the decision in him as a player there. So where am I being too critical at?
Well, I think we've been very critical of Dwayne Haskins, but I think that's the only direction you can be. I mean, how do you spin it otherwise? So I think we've been critical, but rightfully so, because it's been a very tough start to his NFL career, much of it, his own doing.
All right. Is that the Haskins portion of the show?
I think so, yeah. And so let's transition now to the other news of the day. Busy day with coaching staff-related matters. I'll kind of just try to take this chronologically. This was, I think, 2 days ago. The report was on Thursday the Steelers were going to interview Hank Fraley as for their offensive coordinator, or offensive line position, I should say, offensive line coach, to replace Sean Surratt. Fraley began his NFL career with the Pittsburgh Steelers as UDFA in 2000. Robert Morris product, did not stick with Pittsburgh, spent most of his career with Philadelphia and Cleveland, and most recently coaching the Lions for the past couple of seasons. And so no news on if he'll be the guy, but Fraley reportedly interviewing for the job.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? I think once you get past, there are at least some minor dots that you can connect. Obviously being a former, player for a short period of time there, and obviously has a former NFL player at that, put in his time. I think read some quotes. Very technique-driven kind of guy. Very just give me the effort and we can work with it from there. Type guy. Really seems no nonsense. Obviously not a lot to write home about as far as results and overall maybe say running game goes during his time with the Lions there. But look, beggars can't be choosy at this point. I don't think. We know the kind of guys that the Steelers look for when it comes to this. And once again, he's not Jack Bricknell. Did that really happen? Once again, I think it's easy to see why they would bring a guy like him in, and there are at least minor dots that can be connected with him.
Sure. I think they wanted someone, we talked about this, that was, has an NFL resume, both as a coach and a player. And Fraley was in the league for a long time, started a bunch of games, and has been a coach for a long time as well. So I think that is certainly the type of coach that they're going after, whether that's Fraley or someone else they land on. We're not quite sure. For whatever it's worth, I know the Lions did not run the ball well last year. They were bottom third in almost every single category, but according to Lions fans, they said they don't want to see Fraley go. And they thought he did a good job with an offensive line that had a lot of injuries and developing some young guys like Frank Ragnow, their center, dealing with injuries on that right side of the line. Taylor Decker, his improvement as well. So the Lions fans said they thought Fraley did a good job, even if the numbers don't match up with the job he did.
Yeah, they seem just as a whole, just from the kind of the respected kind of Lions, people I follow on Twitter there, that they would be a little bit bummed that they lost him.
Mm-hmm. And obviously new regime, new head coach, new general manager. So that's why Fraley seems to be let go because of that whole transition from the Matt Patricia era. And the little fun fact with him, Fraley was the UCLA's offensive line coach in 2017, replacing Adrian Clem, who's now the Steelers' assistant offensive line coach. So just a little random fun fact for you there. All right, Dave. So that was the O-line coach movement. No other names have been reported. We don't know if Fraley has been offered the job or whatever the case is, but I'm sure if he was offered it, he would take it. Then we got news yesterday on the offensive coordinator, and now the Steelers have interviewed, or at least requesting the interview, or interviewed three people so far. Matt Canada, Hugh Jackson was reportedly interviewed for the job earlier this week, and the Steelers last night reportedly requesting an interview with Chargers quarterbacks coach Pep Hamilton. The Chargers basically have to grant that because of the new rules. You can't block those moves right now. So Canada, Jackson, and Hamilton, the three names on the list.
Hugh Jackson's got an okay offensive mind. All right, I've always commented on the way he likes to the motion aspects that he's worked on in the past. Is that a couple times caused the Steelers some fits, and other teams around the league as well too. The way that he gets those tight ends and those wide receivers on the move. The problem with Hugh Jackson is you can't put duct tape on his mouth. Some kind. That guy's got one of those attitudes, and that I can't do any wrong cockiness attitude there with him. He's okay until he opens up his mouth, if that makes any sense there. As far as a football X's and O's guy, I've never really had an issue with him in the past. His personality, boy, sure can rub some people the wrong way there, and I would imagine just from that aspect alone doesn't seem like a great organizational fit when it comes to the Steelers. So of the three, Matt Canada, Pep Hamilton, and Hugh Jackson, I would think Hugh Jackson has the least likely of a chance of getting the job, I would think.
Certainly was surprising to see his name. He really hasn't been in coaching too much for the last couple of seasons. My view on Jackson as an OC, and really for all these guys, we would have to take a deeper dive into their background whenever they make a hire. But I think because Jackson is arguably the worst head coach in NFL history, you forget that he actually was a pretty decent OC back in his day. I was a big fan of him in Oakland back in the 2010-ish time when he did a good job as the OC and briefly as their head coach there. So the last three times he's been an OC, the offensive rank in terms of points per game has been 7th, 15th, and 6th. So twice of those three last seasons as an OC, he's put his offense into a top 10, nearly top 5 category. So much better as an OC. And I think we do lose sight of that a bit because he was just the worst head coach in NFL history.
Yeah, like I said, his resume as offensive coordinator and scheme and play caller. Look, we studied him a lot over the years, you and I, just because of him being in the division and looking at that tape a couple of times every year. However, it's easy to pick out a Hugh Jackson influences in offense, right? A lot with that, that motion, the misdirection is what really sticks out the most to me. I think when going over my previous notes of Hugh Jackson offenses, his use of misdirection is phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree. And that was one of the best things I thought. He kept defenses off balance and threw a lot at them, a lot of window dressing. But he did it in a way that isn't that college age thing with a lot of jet type stuff. So that might work well with Ben, where you kind of thread that needle between having a lot of motion, dressing things up in a lot of different ways without having to do some of the jet sweeps and things that might not work best with Ben.
All right. And you have done deeper dives into Pep Hamilton more so than I have.
Well, he was actually on my list of the article we wrote the day after they parted ways from Randy Fichtner of the 6 OCs that could be his replacement. We had Matt Canada and Pep Hamilton on that list. And so, I haven't done a deep dive into Hamilton's philosophy, but we know he was the quarterback's coach with the Chargers, helped Justin Herbert have a Rookie of the Year campaign. And he was actually the head coach and GM of the DC Defenders, the XFL team, the short-lived team over there. He's been a head coach, been a coordinator, been a positional coach, worn a lot of hats, was with Michigan, the Wolverines most recently. And so I'm betting him and Tomlin have met up at some pro days before. I know Tomlin was at the 2017 Michigan Pro Day where Hamilton was on staff with Harbaugh and company. So I'm sure they probably have a relationship there. And he was also the Colts OC from 2013 to 2015, got off to a hot start. Things kind of fell apart at the end. So I don't have a great feel for, how great of a hire that would be as we sit here today. But someone that's probably Tomlin has had a relationship with, has a good resume, worn a lot of hats, been, done everything. Again, head coach, OC, positional coach, gives you a good perspective on the job. So I don't know who the favorite is right now. I guess it's still Canada, but it is interesting that those early reports came out that Canada is going to get promoted. Felt like it was going to be a pretty quick change. This team's taken a lot of time vetting these candidates. I'm not sure if that's just due diligence or what, but no decision's been made yet.
Yeah, you have to think the minority rule plays into that to some aspect, to some degree. I really, my sense is that Matt Canada is still the leader in the clubhouse, but we'll see.
But they could have hired. They didn't have to interview Pep. I mean, they could have. They interviewed Jackson a couple of days ago, and they could have just made the hire with Canada. They would have fulfilled the Rooney Rule, and so I don't know. We'll see if that's just the team wanted to be very careful because, again, I think they were too quick to go from Fietner and to go to Surratt. I mean, those decisions were made basically on the spot, and so I think this team wants to take a step back and really feel like they've looked at a lot of different candidates before making a decision.
And who knows? Maybe Pep wants to come. Maybe I don't know. Is that a potential running back coach possibility? Obviously they still have Eddie Faulkner, but I believe there's a report a couple of days ago that maybe we still don't know the entire fate of the rest of some of the Steelers coaches on staff right now. So I don't know if there's anything to that, but he's for all the reasons that you said, it makes sense why they would want to bring in Pep Hamilton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll see what the news. There is some other Steelers news, some coaches that may be leaving, at least getting a look to leave. Wide receivers coach Ike Hilliard is interviewing for the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator job after they just hired Dan Campbell, their head coach, who actually played with Hilliard with the New York Giants for several years back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So Hilliard getting a look there. And was there somebody else that was interviewing that I'm not remembering right now? Or was that it?
Are we missing something here? Look at
and
the
I
site
think
real
that
quick.
was it. I mean, I know that Terrell Austin had interviewed for the defensive coordinator position in Tennessee a week or two ago. No movement on who their next DC is going to be. Matt Canada interviewed for the OC job in Miami. That position has not been filled, but it does not seem like Canada is going to be the guy. So I think those were the movements there.
I would be a bit surprised if Ike Hilliard got the OC job. This just feels like Campbell doing his friend a solid for several reasons, help getting his name kind of circulated at this point. So I'd be a bit surprised if Ike Hilliard was the choice there. What else do we have here? Oh, yeah, you hit on that. Keith Butler for sure. 1-year contract. I don't think that's a surprise there. The Steelers were to hire a new offensive line coach before naming a new offensive coordinator. That was another report I think that happened since we were on the podcast the other day there. So there's that aspect of it.
Which some people got mad about. I didn't get too upset about it. I think those hires are kind of intertwined, at least in Pittsburgh.
Want to make sure those two guys get along pretty good, right?
Yeah, and the O-line coach, at least recently, under Munchak and I believe under Surratt, was the run game coordinator, and the OC was kind of the pass game coordinator, so they kind of really work hand in hand, and I think both hires are equally as important.
I agree. They better get it right this time,
There might not be a next.
Mike Tomlin might not have a next one there. The team also brought in for a visit free agent. He's labeled officially a tackle, Aviante Collins, former TCU product, former. Where did the Vikings get him? I think they got him.
UDFA.
Yeah, an undrafted free agent way back in 2017. The guy that's had a couple of injury problems, the guy that came out of TCU undersized there. I think at last report with the Vikings, though, he was getting more of a look at guard, at left guard specifically with him. When you look at his, and this is going all the way back 2017, surely he's put on a few pounds since then. 6'4", 1/8. 295 pounds back then. Not a great overall reach at 30 arm length. I don't think at 33 3/8 inch, 9 3/8 inch hands coming out of combine. And then you look at his 40 time too. You add all that up together. That screams move me inside the phone booth, if you will. And once again, I think the last kind of report on him was that the Vikings saw him more as potential guard, and he did 34 reps on the bench. So there's that, and probably can do that a little bit better with the shorter arms there. We'll see what comes up on with it. Listed as a visitor, it probably wouldn't be shocking if the Steelers sign him to reserve future contract in the next couple of days.
Yeah, we'll see. I just remember Collins being a really good athlete coming out. He ran, I think, 4.81, which is an insane time for his size.
So, like the second or third best 40 that year for offensive lineman, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, 4.81, it's right up there. So, I mean, not that it means a whole lot translating to the NFL, but a good athlete.
Spark. So. It means spark, which Kevin Colbert can't stay away from. What was his spark? I forgot to do that.
I'm sure it was a good number. You won 4.81. You're probably pretty sparky, and I know you're jonesing for spark information.
I
am.
Going to
talk about that a whole lot this offseason. That's about as close as we're going to get to P-Spark scores and stuff. But I bet you it was pretty good. I don't have his whole combine data set. I don't know what his 3-cone time and things like that were, but 4.81 probably says you tested well in other categories.
I mean, we love this time of year, don't we? I mean, we
yes,
really do.
That hasn't even signed yet. We're talking about his P-Spark.
I mean, we dive in. I got a good run at some tape the last 24 hours or really 48 hours looking at Pitts and this kid out of BYU. Boy, the juice, and we got about 10 or 11 profiles up on the site right now. I just love it. Well, let's see if I can find his name here on the list. Of what is P-Spark? You know what? He probably he didn't do anything else at the combine. I don't think other than lift and ran. I don't think he. I think the other stuff that he did was maybe at his pro day there. So we're probably not going to have a complete P-Spark score on him. I just thought about that. Avante Collins 96.6 was his P-Spark score. But I think that includes a lot of his some pro day numbers. I don't think he did everything at the combine.
Okay.
Overall, but 90 something in shabby, but it's 73rd overall when it comes to offensive lineman numbers in that class, according to 3 Sigma Athlete, which you can Google and find the P-Spark ratings online.
See the one D tackle from Michigan, I forget his name, coming out this year, whose 3-cone time was reportedly like 6.5.
No, I haven't gotten that far into it. No.
Yeah, that's a guy we're gonna have to watch. Not that I know if he'll be a great fit for Pittsburgh, but just interesting name there.
I tell you, I'm looking at that wide receiver. Obviously from BYU, kind of fascinated with him early on, and going through all of his BYU games from last season, and obviously a byproduct from that is looking at that quarterback, seeing that quarterback over there. I'm not so sure, and don't hold me to this, although some will probably will. I'm not so sure that Zach Wilson might not be the best quarterback in this draft early on. And once again, I haven't gone deep in it. I've seen more throws of the Zach Wilson kid than I have any of them just by going through all this tape of the last 24 hours. But he's impressive. He's an impressive young quarterback there. And obviously you look at Mac Jones and Trask and obviously the Clemson quarterback there, and then the other one that we've talked about, Trey. NDSU.
Trey Lance.
Yeah, Trey Lance, another one there. Zach Wilson's got some impressive tape.
Yeah, he's probably going to be the second quarterback off the board behind Trevor Lawrence. A lot of good quarterbacks. A lot of quarterbacks will be taken in the first round here. It's going to have that feel of the 2017 Mason Rudolph class, where you had all those quarterbacks go in the first round, where you have Lawrence and Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Trask, Mac Jones, potential back-end first-round guys. So, yeah, it's going to be a pretty top-heavy quarterback class.
All right, who's got your attention right now, profile-wise?
I am working on a report, like I said earlier, at Boston College tight end Hunter Long. I was going to do one on Jeremy Ruckert from Ohio State. I started watching his tape. I was impressed, but I realized I think Devin actually told me he went back to school. So that's disappointing. Because the thing is, this year, the seniors have until March 1st to come back. I think everyone gets an extra year of special eligibility because of the pandemic. So underclassmen had to declare by this past Monday, but I think upperclassmen actually get until March 1st to decide whether or not they want to come back. So it's kind of complicating that process.
Are they not letting the underclassmen change their mind either?
I don't know if you can change your mind and come back. Obviously, once you hire an agent, you can't go back. I don't know what the rule, but the deadline for underclassmen to declare early was this past Monday. I don't know if there's any extra caveats to that.
All right, boy,
and Hunter Long has not been that impressive. He's been pretty average.
Okay. A lot of who was the other? Tell the people about the other. We covered Dax Raymond, Charles Jones, the two tight ends. We talked about Dwayne Haskins. There was a fourth future guy in there that we know a little bit about too.
Yeah, Steven Denmark. I think we did a profile on him when he came out of did we? Okay, out of Valdosta State. He was a receiver that turned corner, real big, long, like 6'4", 200, great length, really good athlete, interesting kind of lump of clay that went, I think, undrafted and has bounced around the league. But yeah, honestly, he might have been a more interesting name than Haskins on that list, just in the sense of this is a pretty freaky looking cornerback. Now, will he amount to much? Who knows? Probably not. But a guy that I remember had some buzz coming out of a little known Valdosta State a couple years ago.
Yeah, and I think they brought him in. Didn't they bring him in for a pre-draft visit that year, or was supposed to? There was a report they were going to bring him in.
Yeah, they did.
For a pre-draft visit. So there is, look, it's easy to kind of connect the dots on some of these kids, and this is a guy they looked at. He ended up with the Bears, didn't he? 6th or 7th round pick or something like that. I think spent a good portion maybe this last season on their practice squad. So who knows? Look, I mean, you never know. Some of these guys, futures guys brought in, what's going to happen with them, right? It's easy just to say that they're a camp body, but that's a no-no when they talk to you about these kids, right?
I just hope there's a training camp for me to attend to. Anyone can say whatever they want about that. That's still. I hope it's at Latrobe this year, Dave. I really don't know which way this thing's going to go.
All right, I have a keeper cut. I'm glad I got that one knocked out about Vance McDonald out of the way. I got, I think since then I've written about Derek Watt. Where are you on the Derek Watt keeper cut?
I know it only saves you about $1 million after displacement. Again, you would just have to create your overall plan whenever you get the cap number in. But if they cut him, I'm not going to be too upset about it. I think he was a decent special teams player, but not a fantastic, like A+ kind of guy that struggled to stay healthy. And if they want to move on to create the extra $1 million in cap space, then I'm okay with that.
Which way do you think they go?
Well, again, I want to see what this cap number comes in at. I know it's only $1 million, but every million's going to matter if you get down, close to the end of getting cap compliant. To not hedge the question, though, to give my guess, I think they cut him.
I think they keep him.
All right.
Just because of replacement cost versus giving him a second chance, kind of deal there, and. I didn't know which way I was going to go when I started opening up writing that post there, but the more I kind of thought it out, I gave good reasons to both cut and keep, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read it. Yeah, I think it was well reasoned.
All right, what about did Vince Williams too in that? What's your thoughts on that? I did him yesterday. Was a keeper cut segment.
Basically,
yeah, I mean it breaks my heart, but I think he certainly could be on the chopping block. Maybe the most likely option now that Vance has retired. Again, we'll just see what the cap number comes in at and kind of go from there. I think it's hard to really talk about these things in anything resembling absolute terms until we know what the cap number is going to be. Big difference between 198 and 175. If it's 175, it's probably gone. If it's 198, chance he stays somewhere in between. We'll see. But would not surprise me if they moved on because they have Spillane, Bush coming back, UG3, maybe Marcus Allen, maybe you sign Avery Williamson to a really, really cheap 2-year or 1-year minimum salary type contract. So all those reasons being said, would not be shocked if Vince was gone.
I tell you, I will not be surprised either way that goes. I am glad I do not. Glad I don't have to make the decision with him. There are a lot of reasons to keep him. His play against the run, I think we both agree, has slipped a little bit. But nobody on that Steelers defense can still blow up offensive linemen and fullbacks like he can. Look at all those tackles for loss he had last season, man. I mean, That guy can still live in the backfields of other teams there. Running backs hate to see him coming on as a rusher or as a blitzer. Still can go from point A to point B downhill fairly good, but it's everything else, and that's really been the MO on him anyway since coming out of Florida State anyway. There, great leader both on and off field, especially in the locker room. You would think leadership was really be missed. You just can't ask him to do certain things, like cover guys out in space. Lining them up on wide receivers or tight ends, certain aspects of that. The best of both worlds with him would be able to keep him and do so at a minimum salary and save roughly $3 million in the process there. That's the best of both worlds when it comes to him specifically.
Unless you're Vince Williams.
Right, unless you're Vince Williams.
Best thing
right.
For me.
Right,
Same
right.
role, less money.
I tell you, I could see him sticking around past March 17th. I really could.
Maybe. I hope so. But I wouldn't be shocked. Again, I want to see what this cap number's at. And I think it's hard to talk about this stuff until we know what the number is. And then you have that number and you create your plan. Okay, these are the 7 steps we have to do to get cap compliant. And that involves cutting Vince, then it does. If not, then you keep him.
All right. Where else are we in relation to this show now? Covering stuff.
It's a very existential question. You wanted to talk about the RFAs. We talked about the exclusive rights players on Wednesday's show. You want to talk about the list of restricted free agents this year.
I did want to talk about that. And let me pull that list up here real quick here while we're talking.
I think it's a fairly short list.
It is. All right. On the primer, which you can find us by going to SteelersDepot.com, and in a search, just hit restricted primer up there, and it should get you to where you need to go there. Ray McCloud leading off. Ray McCloud, restricted free agent. Obviously, if you wanted to do something with him, a minimum restricted tender would do the trick, which right now I think is estimated to be $2.24 million, which on the surface might not sound like a lot, but when you're dealing with the Steelers and their cap situation, that might be $1.6 million more than they can afford there. I think at a minimum with him, if you were to re-sign him on a minimum 1-year contract and not restricted tender him, would be along the lines of $920,000. So roughly about a $1 million difference there. We joked about how he was used offensively in 2020. Is he that good of a return man that you give him a restricted tender at $2.24 million?
Yeah, that might be too rich. I think he'd be worthy of it, but again, just given the financial climate, not something he might be able to do this year. But I do want to bring McLeod back, so it might be the old Jordan Dangerfield, deal. Right? They did with Dangerfield this past year or something. They didn't tender him, but immediately signed him back. And so I think you want to find a way to bring him back, but if you can bring him back a little bit cheaper, that would be ideal.
I think ideally you try to bring him back on a 1-year deal for $920,000. At the next step up would do something maybe on an Eli Rogers deal, like they did with him. Couple-year deal with a very minimal signing bonus there to keep that cap hit lower than $2.24 million. Where ideally maybe his cap charge comes in at, let's say, $1.1 million. That way you keep him off the street and out of somebody else's hands, and then plus you don't have a lot of money tied up with him as well too. Long and short of it, I'll be shocked if they restricted tender him. And would you agree?
I may be not as shocked as you, but I think there's a better way to bring him back than doing the tender route just because of the money it ties up.
All right, the other one we have talking about is Ola Adeniyi, obviously former undrafted free agent out of Toledo. Played a career-high 144 defensive snaps in 2020 in the 15 regular season games that he dressed for. Also logged another whopping 283 snaps on special teams in 2020. Just 7 total tackles, 1 resulting in lost yardage. He had 2 pass rushing hurries in 2020, with 1 more coming in the team's lone playoff game to the Browns. Not a lot to write home, I don't think, overall as a core special teams player, although he was down the field first a few times there. I think in total he's credited, which you can't turn your head and ignore him. 8 total tackles and forced one fumble, missed one regular season game to a shoulder injury. You could retain him on a low right of first refusal restricted tender once again for $2.24 million. That seems mighty big of a number for a guy like him that's third or fourth on a depth chart right now. But they don't have a lot there to choose from right now on the outside linebacker depth chart, especially if Bud Dupree rides off into the sunset there. What are you doing with Ola Adeniyi?
I would much rather give McLeod to the original round tender than Adeniyi. I would bring Adeniyi back because I think he did a nice job on special teams, but not for a penny more than the minimum. I think he does okay versus the run, but offers nothing as a pass rusher. And again, just given the cap situation, even understanding the depth there is poor. I think he's a special teams guy, a number 4, number 5 type, and I can't give anyone like that more than the minimum.
Where is he on the Anthony Chickillo rating scale?
Worse than Chickillo, a similar special teamer, maybe a touch worse, but similar. But not as good of an outside linebacker. Chickillo is not a great outside linebacker. No. So that kind of tells you. And Adeniyi got a lot of buzz coming out of camp. It was his first camp. He tore it up. But as a pass rusher, the guy rarely ever gets a hurry. I think we have him down for 2 the entire season with pretty good opportunity. So he's a number 4 at best, I think. Outside linebacker. And I can't give you much money for that.
I think you look at him and say, look, do you want this minimum 1-year deal to come back and compete for a roster spot? And or once again a 2-year deal with minimum salaries involved. You give them $250,000 signing bonus, something like that, where you don't lock up a lot with them. At least you get the body back competing again, and then you go from there. So not going to cause huge ripples either way. $2.24 million for a restricted tender for him is just way too rich, I think.
Yeah. Could not do that at all for Adeniyi. Good, decent special teams player, but yeah, just too much money for that.
And that's it. That's the list of restricted free agents.
All right. So we're not expecting tenders for either of those guys, but both could circle back on cheaper deals.
Yes.
All right. Fair enough. All right, Dave, where are we going to next? I think that was actually the list of topics that I had to talk about from a Steelers standpoint. Anything I'm missing?
No, I don't think you are. How about we get to, before we get to our emails here, we get to our conference game picks, courtesy of our sponsor, mybookie.ag. How's that sound?
Yeah, does that sound good? You want to talk about our friends over at MyBookie some more, or how do you want to set this one up?
Yeah, look, no real script, no real ad this time. Just talking from past experience. If you're a better like I am and you want to do it online, mybookie.ag is a fantastic choice. I've used them for years too. A great app, a great easy to use website online. You can do fantasy stuff. They have all, not just football as well too. They've got squares contests coming up, NFL, NBA, obviously NCAA basketball, MMA, online casino, blackjack, golf, NHL, tennis, soccer, boxing, you name it, man. They have it there. Live betting, once again, like I said, a casino room with all the bells and whistles that you'd find elsewhere on top of it there. So make sure when you go for their latest promotion as well too. If you're a new MyBookie customer, use promotional code TERRIBLE at sign up there to get the latest promotion that they have there as well too. And we're thrilled to have them back for 3 more episodes leading on up, obviously, to the Super Bowl here when it comes to mybookie.ag. So look, support the people who support us, and in doing so, that would mean supporting mybookie.ag. And we're thrilled once again to have had them as a sponsor of the Terrible Podcast this year.
Absolutely. So thank you to those guys for their support of the podcast and the show. All right, Dave, let's make our championship weekend picks.
Let's do it. Let's start off with the Sunday's game. Tampa Bay at frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. The Packers obviously favored in this one at home, laying 3.5 here. Alex?
Yeah, give me the Packers. I'm not betting against Aaron Rodgers and that offense. The Bucs have some injuries at receiver. AB, we'll see if he plays this week. But just overall, I think the Packers have been too strong. Rodgers is just in that zone right now, and I don't think anyone in the NFC can stop him.
Score a win for the adjusted net yards for passing attempt stat this week. I'm taking the Buccaneers in an upset this week. Preseason, I think I had the Steelers and the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl there. This should be a good game. Really, both of them should be great games, to be quite honest with you there. Give me the Buccaneers at worst to cover this. At worst, they lose by 3 at best, and I like their chances of winning this outright, too. So jump on the money line with this one. Tampa Bay plus 3.5. That leaves one other game, short list this week here. Buffalo Bills at the Kansas City Chiefs. All eyes, obviously, on Patrick Mahomes and his situation there, coming off of having to leave that game last week there. Buffalo, an explosive offense. If there's one team, though, coming out of this AEC, really probably there was two of them that potentially could give KC all they wanted on the AFC side. Buffalo and the Ravens were probably those two teams there. Buffalo's the last man left standing here. Kansas City at home, favored by 3. What you got, Alex?
I believe Mahomes is going to play. That seems to be the trend of the reports right now. But I guess this was after wildcard weekend, but I promise you this is my prediction before the playoffs began. I had Buffalo going to the Super Bowl, so I'm going to stick with that in the upset. Josh Allen also having an amazing season. That defense has improved. We'll see if Trey White can lock down Tyreek Hill. They got Matt Milano back, a linebacker. That's important against the guy like Travis Kelce. So I got the Bills in the upset, winning this one outright.
Sign me up. It might sound like crazy analysis here, but if Buffalo can score points, they can win this game.
That's why they pay you the big bucks.
But within that, they're going to have to score 26, 27, 20, ideally 30. Now, that Chiefs defense, is not great. And because of that, I think there's a chance that because of that Buffalo offense and because of Josh Allen being able to push the football down the field and some of the other aspects of offensively, I like their chances. Obviously, I don't think they can win unless Patrick Mahomes doesn't play or whatnot, you wouldn't think this would be a 2017 game or along those lines. I think the lower the scoring anyway, I think bodes in the favor of Kansas City. I think Buffalo can score points. And then I think also with, we'll see how healthy Patrick Mahomes is in this one on top of it here. I think Buffalo can pull the upset. Give me both the dogs in this one, Alex. Give me the Buffalo Bills, another win for the adjusted net yards for passing attempt stat defensively on top of it here. And plus, remember, your turnover number here, the Buccaneers and the Bills, we got to get both those two teams going to the Super Bowl here. All right, I have Buffalo and Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl, and I would imagine you have Buffalo and Green Bay in the Super Bowl right now.
I do, and I probably will pick the Packers to win it in that scenario, but let's see if I get that far and go from there. But yeah, I got Packers.
But I'm taking I want the points in both of these here, and the money lines as well, too. I think both the dogs can win this one.
Yeah, should be good slate of good slate of games on Sunday. All right, Dave. I guess this is my turn. Let's get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
Let's get to the email machine here. We'll start here first. Happy Friday from Chris Luke Hart, he writes in, good morning, fellas. I listened to the Wednesday podcast, and I believe the Steelers should go after a tight end in round one. After watching highlights of Kyle Pitts, he is absolutely a monster, but we already have a Pitts-style player in Chase Claypool. I think the tight end we should go after is Pat Freiermuth. He is called Baby Grunk for a reason, and the kid catches everything thrown in his vicinity. Plus, he blocks well. In my opinion, having a great blocking tight end is having an offensive lineman, so we kind of would be addressing both position. Thanks, guys. I don't think you're going to get any argument so far out of me or you when it comes to a tight end early, and maybe even one such as Freiermuth, which I have looked. Granted, I think Alex might have looked a little bit. I know we have a profile of him on the site that's nicely done. I've obviously read that. I haven't gone much deeper into him other than that. Maybe you have, Alex, but I know even in your video that's up on the site today, you name him as a possible early target of the Steelers at tight end. So no arguments from us, right?
Right. Yeah, I think Freiermuth is probably the most logical name just because it's hard to envision Kyle Pitts falling to 24. Not that he can't. It's for early in this process, but the expectation is that he's going to be more of a top 15 type player, maybe even top 10. So the question would be, would you take Freiermuth at 24? Would you hope that he would circle back to you in the second round? That may be a bit of a risk right there. So that would be an interesting decision for Pittsburgh. Is Freiermuth worth the pick at 24, especially if there's, say, an Alex Leatherwood or some other top tackle on the board?
Yeah, and I'm not there yet in the come get me in a couple more weeks here when I look a little bit deeper on him. Sometimes we see usually that tight ends nowadays, unless they're elite, they usually hold on to the second or third round, right? So I'm not so. I guess what I'm getting at yet is I have not seen enough that lets me slam dunk Freiermuth into the first round, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But the question is, would he be there at, what's their second round pick going to be, 48? I don't know, whatever the number would be, 48, 49. Would he be there? There is a question.
All right, we definitely will be looking at tight ends, Chris. Have faith when it comes to that here. Let's see here. Reminder that Vance McDonald will be available on let's see, they're having a press conference with Vance McDonald, it seems like today. Jonathan Mason writes in, I keep seeing a lot of Steelers Nation writing with the narrative, along with some media, that they want someone brought in from the outside of the organization for the OC job. Canada was brought in just a year ago and was tabbed as innovative and likely the next OC by a lot of people, and yet now some have a problem with it if he ends up getting the job. I know that Pep Hamilton has more NFL experience, but he also jumped around a lot. What would you say are the biggest stylistic differences between the two based off what you can tell so far?
That's honestly difficult for me to try to say without diving into these guys more, and I probably won't until they make a hire on one particular guy. I still believe Canada is the front runner right now. I think he's just going to be in the cycle of there's always something to complain about with an OC, and so that's going to be like here are your options. Either you hire a former OC, and that means he probably got fired somewhere and didn't do a good job, and there's that mark on his resume, or you hire someone who hasn't been an OC before, and you say, well, they're new, they're unproven, we shouldn't hire him. So you got to make a choice there. In terms of differences, I think Canada's offense would be more college style, considering that's where he's been more recently, less so than what Hamilton would run. But I couldn't tell you a real specific differences between the two philosophically.
Yeah, without diving way going a lot deeper into Pep Hamilton stuff. I mean, obviously, we both looked quite a bit at Canada's stuff over the last calendar year, but I haven't gone in depth, obviously, with Pep Hamilton.
Yeah, me neither.
All right, let's see here. What else do we have? From Sim Football Critic, first of all, thank you for all you do for Steelers Nations. By far the best in the business. Quick question: what moves do you expect the Steelers to make with the cap being at $180 million? Does this affect the expected extensions, cuts, etc.? Another quick question, if you have time: what are your thoughts on Vance's retirement? Is it likely the Steelers will go tight end in the draft and retain Ebron for 2021? Thanks, guys. Sim, hopefully we answered the second part of your question already. Thoughts on Vance and tight end and Ebron in 2021. As far as the cap being potentially being 180 million, and does it affect the expected extension and cuts? Extensions, no. I mean, you could I think we talked about this. You could potentially maybe see them extend a guy that you kind of, I don't know about that, in a sheer effort to get his cap number down this year. I think we've already talked a lot about potential no new money extensions and who the guys that will qualify under that. I think the biggest question mark of your question there would be what would the cuts look like if it is 180 million versus 198.2 million there, and especially between now and March 17th. Does it bring into question a guy like maybe Joe Hayden? Alex and I just talked about Vince Williams and maybe the cap number playing a big part in him. Derek Watt is another one here that you talk about. Where does Marquise Pouncey, getting past just a retirement decision alone, with him, how does maybe he play into that? The list overall in general isn't going to be very long, I don't think, as potential cap cuts. It's just how much does the cap play into that?
Yeah, we discussed that on Wednesday's show with that Mike Florio report of it being in the $180 million range. So, yeah, it sounds like it'll be a super long list of cuts. It'd just be very weighty names that could potentially be cut.
This from Elliot Shore Parks up on, I think he covers the Eagles. A good X's and O's guy, right? Kyle Pitts is going to be an elite player in the NFL. I know the Eagles' tight end situation is complicated. They really need a wide receiver. The rest of it flew off the screen there. But I think he expects Kyle Pitts to be a top 10 selection. Look, guy's impressive as a pass catcher. The question is, obviously, the blocking department isn't there with him, but a lot of teams will look at him more as the move guy and kind of work with the lack of blocking going from there. So it's early still. I haven't ranked a lot of these guys out. Obviously, I know you haven't either, Alex, but Kyle Pitts probably not going to be on the board at 24 when the Steelers pick.
Seems unlikely right now. A lot can change, but yeah, it does not seem like the odds are good.
Brett, I was listening to the initial discussion on the podcast about draft coverage and contract status, and I had a realization. I think the only offensive lineman non-future under contract beyond the only offensive non-future under contract beyond 2021 is Dotson. Obviously, this year. They have Big Al, Filer, Hawkins, and Banner as free agents next year. I believe DeCastro, Pouncey, and Okorafor. Is that right? If that is the case, I know Dave usually doesn't like to look ahead future years, but in this case, knowing that only Dotson is under contract for 2021, make you more likely to take an offensive line in round one, or at least take offensive line early. I wonder if he's behind. I wonder if Brett stays caught up on the podcast. Didn't we already talk about offensive linemen potentially being in the topic of first or second round pick?
Yeah, we've done that for a couple weeks now. Yeah, I think you're right with all that information about who's under contract through when. Yeah, I expect this team to draft probably 2 offensive linemen in April's draft. One early, probably another one mid to a later day 3 guy, 1 tackle, 1 center / guard. So I think they're going to have to really focus and address and reload that position.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've had the same opinion, right?
I think so. Yeah, we both talked about offensive tackle. Would not shock either of us if that was the pick of 24, whoever that name may be.
Right. Look, I think offensive line or tight end. And maybe, when you look at the first, let's say 3 rounds, first 3 selections of this year's draft for the Steelers, you can make a good argument. All 3 could be offensive positions. And then within that, tight end, offensive line, and potentially running back, right?
Yeah, absolutely. These last couple of drafts have been more defensive heavy, especially at the top. 2020 or 29. Yeah, 2020. But I think we're going to see an offensive player taken in the first round for the first time in quite some time.
All right. Let's see. This one's too long. Eddie Cruz writes, said, Dave and Alex been following the site and podcast since 2012. Let me see if I can pull the rest up. Even while on deployments to nearly every country in the Middle East. God bless you, Eddie. Thank you and keep up the great work. Anyhow, back to Steelers business, which seems very fungible lately. I didn't write this thought in previously, but I found the fact that not making the Matt Canada the OC officially was not an accident and got me thinking. My tinfoil hat was extremely tight and thought to myself, is it possible they leaked this out to see how the fan base would react? Then they proceeded to conduct additional OC interviews. Don't get me wrong, I'm in the get a new OC not named Matt Canada camp. Or is it this possible a power play to push out Big Ben, bringing in the young bull, quote unquote, Dwayne Haskins, not hiring his preference, Matt Canada, as OC? I think our buddy Eddie might have that cap on a lot tighter than Dave wears his cap, right?
Sounds like it's screwed in. No, I'm just kidding, Eddie. I don't think any of that is. I think we're overthinking it just because we're a little impatient for the hire. I don't even know what Ben's preference is for OC, to be honest with you. Maybe he doesn't want Canada, maybe he does, but I think the focus is just on vetting these candidates. Again, you had to interview a minority candidate to fulfill the Rooney Rule, so that takes some time as well. And they just want to be more careful about this process leading up to their decision. I
don't think that the best part about this email is I thought to myself, it is possible they'd leak this out to see how the fan base would react. Yeah, that's screwed in tight, Eddie. They don't give a crap what none of us think, and shouldn't. We joke all the time that Mike Tomlin listens to the podcast and all like that. They probably don't, and hopefully they don't. They don't care when it comes to fan base and podcast criticism and all like that. So yeah, I think that's a little bit out there, Eddie, trying to be polite about it there, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, Richard Jameson writes in, I'm disappointed by the Dwayne Haskins signing. Multiple reports characterize him as having poor study and practice habits. He's repeatedly had off-the-field issues. Brad, and he references a couple of tweets our own Brad put out there. Congelia reported that on passes of at least 20 yards from the line of scrimmage. He is 11 of 48, 23% completion, blah, 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 5 interceptions. I'd rather have Joshua Dobbs as a number 3 quarterback. I'd rather have Devlin Hodges. I'd rather have Dave Bryan. Let's not go that far there. Why do some people, including Alex, consider him low risk, high potential? He's coming after you, Alex.
Well, to be clear, I don't consider him a high reward. I don't think the reward is that high because I don't really think what is the best case scenario with this guy? He's going to be the heir to Ben. I think it's unlikely. I think it's low risk because there's nothing invested in him. I mean, it's a futures contract. They can cut him if he doesn't do things the right way. They don't like whatever happens to his path. So I'm just not trying to be up in arms over it because there's nothing invested in the guy. It's a futures contract. But I really don't think it's – I know some people will say no risk, high reward. I think it's no risk, low reward, more reward than risk, but I think both are actually pretty minimal.
People have already sent some of my tweets to freezing cold takes or whatnot. Some Haskins fanboys, I guess. Look, I mean, obviously we hope it works out, for the team's aspect. How nice would it be to steal one in here, and best case, I guess, extreme best case scenario, you get a guy, franchise quarterback for the next however many years. I mean, the kid's young, right? I mean, from an athletic, standpoint of being able to get a lot of years out of him if he works out, yeah, it's there. Why wouldn't we root for something like that? On the flip side, I don't know how us being honest, brutally honest, in my case probably, warrants getting freezing cold takes or whatnot on that, right? Hey, Richard,
SEC internet for you.
real quick, Richard, I don't know if you read my article on trying to make sense of the I thought it was very fair in that article, didn't you, Alex? Making sense of why they signed Dwayne Haskins. And look, football analysis, tape analysis is tape analysis. That's what there's a lot of things that sets Steelers Depot and this podcast apart from other sites and podcasts, but tape evaluation, honest tape evaluation, it plays a big role in that, correct?
Yeah, for sure. I know you watched a ton of tape last night. I tried to get to some tape last night as well. So we're just trying to be honest about our assessment of it. We both want him to succeed and want him to do well, and that's good for him, good for the Steelers if that's what happens. But we're just telling you the reality of the situation right now.
I have nothing to gain, good or bad, by him flunking out or latching on for 8 years, or however long a period here. My job is to kind of look at this and make evaluations and move forward there. All right, Craig Foster writes in, Juju versus Bud. Happy Friday, guys. Everyone is talking about re-signing Juju. What makes the most sense for the Steelers, signing Juju or Bud? I understand neither is likely, but given the depth of the position groups and the similar cost for both players, it seems like Bud might be the better choice. Thanks, Craig.
No, I think Juju's the much more logical guy to retain because you don't have a replacement for him. You have a replacement for Dupree with Alex Highsmith. Depth will have to be addressed for sure, but just given that it's hard to find that big slot receiver. There isn't that kind of guy on the roster behind Juju. I think he's the guy that is more likely to be retained and more logical to be retained.
What Alex said. And look, I'm not taking anything away from Bud Dupree, but even if you did get him, that's a 1 year. It's more likely a 1 year situation. Even if you got to that point and could afford it, which I don't think they'll be able to do there. Making an investment in Juju would be the more correct of the two moves there, and I'm not even convinced that happens. There we'll have to see how big if either of the two is brought back, it's a lot more likely to be Juju than Bud.
Agreed.
Matthew Kisner writes in, Haskins, good pickup, ? Hey guys, love the show. You guys are so informative. Keep it up. I want to know how you guys felt about the 1 year signing of Haskins. I feel it's a great signing. We get depth at the quarterback, and he has only upside, in my opinion. Worst case scenario, the Pittsburgh area adult ballet venues. That's a good way to put it. Gentlemen's clubs is what I like to call them. Area adult ballet venues get an uptick in business. He'll get to be a wing.
I'm just gonna say he's just going there for the wings.
A wing critic. Thanks again for all the time you put into the podcast and website. Matt from Oakland, Maryland, about 2 hours south of Pittsburgh.
All right. Well, I don't know what to do with that information, but thank you for the joke. Vance McDonald says he's known about for about 6 months he was going to retire. So
I think we've known it too.
Fair point.
I don't want to be. Look, guy's a great guy. Like you said at the top, you draw him out the way you kind of hope Steelers tight ends will be. Heath Miller and then Vance McDonald, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Jeff Berg writes in, Cap versus Roethlisberger. First, this is dangerous hypothetical territory. And, hey, this is it for me. He said he told Ben, hey, this is it for me. I'm done. That's Vance McDonald talking about conversation with Ben. Let's see here. It goes on to say, dangerous that this is hypothetical. Just philosophize it into the off-season fungible minutia. We got us something there with fungible minutia, Alex. We are. I am changing the vocabulary landscape, and somewhere my English teacher is rolling over in high school English teacher, if she's still alive, is rolling over in her grave of the thought of that happening. She's probably cringing that I have a podcast and that I write. Let's see how many 6 times. 365. What is what's the math on that? That's how many posts I write a year. I bet she can't imagine.
2190 is the math.
Wow. I bet that I do 2 of them a year has her rolling over in her grave if she's still alive or not alive. If the cap falls to 180 million range, how serious would the consideration be of cutting Ben? How good a team could you field to give Ben a chance to win it all? I mean, this is the hypothetical of hypotheticals, right?
Yeah, it's not going to be about cutting Ben because of a cap casualty. You're going to cut everybody else before Ben because if you have Ben, you still have a chance, even though that chance greatly diminished, which it would be. But if you cut Ben, if you keep the other guys, your chances are really remote to non-existent. So you're not cutting Ben. You're not saving $41 million by doing that. I know that was not said in the question, but just to get that out there, you're only saving less than half of that. Just not going to happen.
Here's the thing. It starts and begins with Ben. Do you believe if he plays versus him not playing, does he give you the best shot at winning potentially winning a Super Bowl? And the question and the answer to that is, even though it seems far-fetched, the answer to that is you have a better chance of, regardless of who's on the team, of winning a Super Bowl in 2021 and 2021 alone with Ben as opposed to not Ben. End of story, period, exclamation point, comma.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So that's where it starts and ends right there. The cap savings and building around all of it, you have to answer that question first and foremost there. So you don't cut Ben based on a cap number or anything else along those lines. You make everything else work around it if Ben comes back. And you believe that you have a chance to win. That's how you look at that in my opinion.
I agree.
Here is a very good one from Dante Bissonnier. He didn't. Dante, it's your fault. You didn't provide phonetic pronunciation. Hey, this is Dante, and I'm from West Newton. Do you know where West Newton is?
I don't think I do.
All right. Huge fan of the pod, and the Depot is unquestionably home to the best Steelers content. Thank you for that. I was watching highlights of Trey. This is a guy that likes getting into tape here, first and foremost. I like that. Highlights of Trey Sermon, and there was a play that got me absolutely hyped. I'll include a link at the bottom. Buckeyes had the ball in their 37. Sermon breaks loose, and Fields, who is the quarterback, sees his back taking off, so he takes off, and I mean he flies. There's a defender in pursuit of Sermon, and Fields gets the block at the 10-yard line and races him to help Sermon secure a touchdown. I let out a woo. Can you guys recall the most memorable moments when evaluating tape, whereas football purists got you hyped as well, especially when it catches you off guard? Fingers crossed for Trey Smith at pick number 24 on behalf of Steelers Nation. Keep up the incredible work. I wonder if he meant Trey Sermon there. He said Trey Smith at the end there. Oh, Lord, if I had the moments where I'm watching tape on a player and either it be that player or another player where I go, holy too many for me. I tell you, just I guess most recently was maybe the Notre Dame tape last year. And that kid that's got that 4.2 whatever speed just going, oh my God. Who's your most recent one?
I remember watching, it was the clip of Adrian McGee, one of the LSU linemen last year, the one where he took out 3 guys on the same play. That was pretty cool. That went viral before tape season. Very rarely do I indulge myself with a player's highlight reel, like a YouTube highlight cut up, because that stuff is obviously, just edited and you can make anyone look good in the highlight reel. But this was after I watched him, but then I wanted to go back and just watch highlights because he was so fun to watch. But Jakeem Grant from Texas Tech with Miami right now, just a really fun. I love those short, shifty, explosive return type guys, and he's one of the more recent guys that just a lot of fun to watch. The way he made guys look just silly in space. So Jakeem Grant was one of the more recent guys that just was a lot of fun to get to watch and evaluate.
Braden Lindsay is the kid out of Notre Dame. You can do a search on my timeline for Braden Lindsay. Look, you know it when you see it when it comes to me of the guys that catch, because I'll instantly when I get wowed like that, whether it be a player that I'm purposefully watching or a guy that oh my God, what was that? I usually instantly trim out that clip and post it on the Twitter machine there. So, it's fun to have those moments, isn't it, Alex? To where you go, oh my God, and especially when it's maybe a guy that keeps showing up on tape that somebody else that you're watching.
Yeah, especially, go through the hours of just kind of watching. Not that it gets a little monotonous, but it gets maybe a little monotonous sometimes, and then something real exciting happens, and that's always rewarding.
Steve Navakovich, I think Steve's one that came to town and had lunch with me one time here. Hi, guys. I continue to love the show. One thing I don't hear anyone talking about is the secondary effect of the anticipated reduction in the salary cap. If it drops to $180 million, that will drain a lot of money out of the free agency market and should negatively impact player values for guys who are not Bud Dupree level talent. That may help teams re-sign players who aren't seeing big offers in free agency, which would soften the blow of the salary cap reduction for the teams. I expect the impact of the salary cap reduction to fall disproportionately on the guys who are unlucky enough to be hitting free agency in 2021. It may be a very unusual year for free agency and should be interesting to watch. Comments. Here's the thing that I keep going back to this. Okay, let's say the guys like Cameron Sutton and Mike Hilton don't get, let's say in Hilton's case, the Kellen Moore value. Is it Kellen Moore? The Colts. The Colts cornerback.
Kenny Moore.
Kenny Moore. I don't know why I'm thinking Kellen all of a sudden.
Kellen is the Cowboys offensive coordinator.
Kenny Moore. Let's say Mike Hilton doesn't get that kind of low volume, which in my opinion his floor should be at that or a little bit. But let's say he doesn't. Why? Wouldn't these guys would be better off signing 1-year deals than they would locking themselves up for 2 or 3 years because of thinking ahead, thinking that the market going to explode in 2022, and thus they'd be back right there, be able to essentially maybe double dip on some guaranteed money. Now, obviously, you run into the risk of not having that couple years of that guaranteed money, yada yada. What's going to be impacted the most across the league is the middle class free agents, whether they're on rosters right now or scheduled to be unrestricted free agents. Your cream of the crop unrestricted free agents, I think, are still going to be cream of the crop and still going to get paid. Now, might that list dip down a little shorter? There's still going to be teams with cap money that need to spend cash versus cap. Don't look at it at cap. Look at it as cash. Do teams have money to spend cash? They'll make the cap work. And the answer to that, in my opinion and experience, is yes. There'll be the haves out there that have the cash. And if that's the case, there's still going to be teams, a lot of players making what I would consider fair market values.
Yeah, I think you said that well. That's been the talking point we've had for a while now, is that hollowing out of the middle class, which is because the stars are still the stars. You're going to pay your stars because you need them to win to keep your job. And you're going to keep the cheap veterans and the rookies and all them because they're cheap. Everyone else kind of gets the shaft.
Right, and we'll see if it comes in, actually at 180 million, or if that's just fodder to get people talking and clicks or what have you here. Let's go one more here. This one from Paul Brown writes in, David Knox, sorry if you already answered on the site, but what implications are we facing when the NFL moves to a 17th game? Do the players get additional compensation if they sign a contract for 16 regular season games? No. I'm correct on that, right?
I believe so. What did the NFL give up though to get the union to go along with 17 game seasons? I forget what the agreement was.
I'll have to go back and look to see what exactly the players got out of it.
I mean, I guess just in the whole CBA.
Wasn't there something, maybe a potential reduced preseason games or whatnot?
They got a bigger piece of the overall revenue share, though, right? And they get
wasn't it like 55% or something? I forget even what
something like that. I think that's what it was.
Split was something along those lines there. The current schedule only shows the Steelers playing 16 games in 2021. Who would the 17th be against, and where would it be played? Would this be an unfair advantage to half the teams since they'd receive an extra game's revenue compared to the 16 other teams? Well, because you have revenue sharing, right? That aspect doesn't really play into it overall there. The speculation, I think most of it started, with Albert Breer, is the fact that if there was a 17th game in the Steelers instance, it would be against it would be AFC North versus AFC or NFC West, and then order of finish. So that would potentially have the Steelers playing the Seahawks. And then within that, I believe the speculation would be, and this is only speculation all the way around right now when it comes, I don't think it's set, the 17th is set in stone, even though I think a lot of people are pointing to that, to it going that way. I believe the early speculation is not only would it be the Seahawks, but the Steelers would host the game, that the North would, I think, host the, I forget how it works. But anyway, what I've read and the speculation is that the Steelers would host the Seahawks as that 17th game, period.
And it's a rotating home away
right
for the 17th game. So that he's asking about how do you balance it out. Some teams get the extra game at home, some teams get the extra game away. That rotates every year, right?
Correct. So it all come out in the wash.
Right. So that's the answer to that.
Bruce Arians has ruled out Antonio Brown against the Packers on Sunday if you're scoring at home. But that's all we need, right, is Tampa Bay versus KC to make the 2020-2021 season extra special for Steeler fans. All right, we did it, Alex. Over a 2-hour podcast today. You're welcome.
I'm surprised it wasn't longer. To be honest with you. So much we had to talk about today.
All right. Within that, as always, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on the Twitter machine at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com if you like what we do, and we hope that you do. For those of you that are leaving the show because of our Haskins comments, sayonara. For the rest of you staying, if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, please go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button upright navigational bar for 1 calendar year for $25. You can have an ad-free version of the site. Obviously, if you'd like to donate, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button upright navigational bar. They'll take you to PayPal to make a secure donation that way. Alex and I will be back on Monday. Well, I don't know how quick the news cycle is going to move, Alex, but I don't know if it's any indication what's happened the last couple of days. We might have a lot more to talk about on Monday. You and I will wrap up the conference championship games that took place over the weekend. I'm getting myself a Dwayne Haskins lower tramp stamp tattoo this weekend here. There, I'll send you a picture of it. I know you can't wait. In the meantime, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.